Hello, welcome back to my channel Random Drop, and this week I want to talk about Final Fantasy XIV's main story quest for Dawntrail. Let's get into it.
Hey everybody, before we get started, I just wanted to say if you enjoy our content and want to stay up to date with our videos, hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel. Thanks. So, on to the video.
So, some quick history about me personally. I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV since A Realm Reborn launch and have fallen in love with the story over the years. It started a bit rough, skipped some quests, and I understood very basically what was happening in A Realm Reborn. And then when the banquet scene happened in A Realm Reborn, I started to pay a lot more attention and fell in love with Heavensward and so on, till we had this incredible climactic end in Endwalker. So for me personally, the Zodiark and Hydaelyn arc of Final Fantasy XIV is my favorite story ever told in media in general. But that's a long way of saying that Dawntrail and this new arc we're going into has some impossible shoes to fill, and it probably will never reach those heights. I still personally want to see more of this world, meet new characters, new enemies, new cultures, new lands, and find new mysteries. And that's what Dawntrail is really successful at. As we go to this completely new land that we've heard very little about and meet wildly different cultures and many different cultures and just dive deep into them with a familiar cast, but with some new characters that the story mainly focuses on. So really quick is how I want to structure this is I'm going to do a non-spoiler section where I talk about the positives of the story and then the negatives. After that, I will probably do a spoiler section and then kind of just talk about the more in-depth parts I wanted to talk about. Let's get into the review of Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail's main story quest. So let's start with the positives. One thing that I did notice as I played through Dawntrail's story is that yes, it is very much a break. It is very much focused on the new characters that had hours and hours of time, kind of sit back and let things happen. You yourself are taking more of a mentor role and a adventure role, with the tales of what you've done still having impact at how people look at you and respect you, right? You're not just some random shitter. People understand that you're a big deal, but they still don't know the scale. But you are more on the sidelines, and it mainly focuses on this new cast of characters and Kryl, who was with us from the beginning, but she never had that time to actually have her story arc and her moment. She was very much sidelined, and now it is very much her time. But again, she is maybe like the third wheel in this whole thing, as the game mainly focuses on Wuk-Lamat, Erenville, and Koana, and everything happening in Tuliyollal, and it is a good starting point for a new story. If you are a new player coming into this game and you just skip past everything, you could technically start here, as the story mainly focuses on the new. You can get through this story and not be confused really at any points or anything like that, as everything they're introducing is usually new concepts, and then with slight mentions and boxes of dialogue that mentions things in the past, right? The game's overall story is mainly focused on the future and what lies ahead, than really retreading anything in the past actually. So a really quick thing I just wanted to say is that, hey, if you didn't want to play an incredible saga, but it is very long, and you want to start here, you can, and it doesn't even spoil anything that happened in that previous saga, to where, hey, if you like this story, you can go back and experience the Hydaelyn and Zodiark arc. One really quick positive is, yes, this is a break. This is a starting point for many people. And I imagined at some point in whatever expansion or patch, Yoshi P is probably going to start people at Dawntrail at some point, as getting through 300 hours of story is an impossible task if you're trying to get new players into your game. The new world itself is incredibly beautiful, and the cultures and the peoples we're meeting are nothing like anything we've met in our lands in Eorzea. Thankfully, since it's focused on the new world, it doesn't have that weird Stormblood problem where they're trying to introduce two new cultures at the same time, and none of them really get the amount of time they really should. Tuliyollal and the areas around it feel like a country with an immense history and depth and culture and a people. So you understand why this rite of succession is so important, and why the choice of the next ruler is going to impact the world of Hydaelyn for many years to come. And as someone who is Mexican, it was really awesome to see bits and pieces of my culture everywhere, also mixed in with people further south, and also like areas that look like Arizona and Texas, and just this whole part of the world that I don't see very much in games, or I feel like I don't see very much in games. Just seeing the little lizard people like eating tacos and shit, and like them making like tacos al pastor and all that stuff makes me excited. I like seeing enemies like chupacabras and things like that. I wonder if there's a lechuza in the game. They need to add a lechuza. Seeing my culture and folklore represented really makes me understand why other people look for representation in games, as it was never something I really thought about or cared about, as I feel like Latin American and Mexican culture is kind of just one of those that just doesn't get looked at because we get lumped in with American culture. So it's just something that doesn't feel as extravagant, right? It's like, it's compared to like adding an Indian culture or more African American culture to a video game. It's way more extravagant, right? Compared to just being in America. I imagine, since America is literally connected to Mexico and Latin America and Brazil, that it's not as alien, so games don't like try to delve into that as much. This is how I personally feel. It's a weird tangent for me to go off into. TLDR, it was really excited to see my culture and nearby cultures represented, and seeing all this stuff that I recognize, and it was just like really fun treat to go through and be like, oh yeah, they're doing this thing, or oh, I recognize this monster's name, or the way she says papa and mama. All that stuff just kind of picks at you a little bit and gets to you, and you're like, ah, there's a little bit of me in this game, weird, and it's cool to see. And with Ishikawa leaving and being more in the background, I imagine she's working on other projects. There's basically a new team of writers for Dawntrail in itself, and moving forward, there's always been different writers for the Final Fantasy XIV series. Is just that Ishikawa picked up in Shadowbringers, and Shadowbringers was a fucking banger, and she finished off with Endwalker, but now, hey, she hung up her pen, she's doing other things, and the new blood's gotta rise, right? And one thing Ishikawa's really good is really just digging into you and making you think about life, the things you've done, the choices you've made, and so much else, right? And just makes you relate to these characters and the things that are happening on such a deep level, where you just sit there and just think about life. There's usually something in this game that a person can relate to on a fundamental level that it'll kind of just get them. Dawntrail in itself still has some of that quality writing. There are still a lot of moments that make you relate. Think about your parents, about the people you've lost, and the choices you would make. And there are some really relatable villains just doing the things they have to do and get it done. Not all of it is incredible, and not all of it is going to be on the level of Shadowbringers or Endwalker, but you can see the soul of what Ishikawa did to this series still there in the background, and they're starting to build a bit. I don't think it's all perfectly executed, but I would put this in the positive with the changing of writers, that hey, there's still good stuff here. There's still quality. There's still meat on these bones, as it's introduced some, I think, really incredible villains and some new favorite characters, or characters I want to see more of, right? As the Scions are kind of basically taking the back seat, and they have to sell us on this new world and land, and I think they are highly successful in it so far. And the final half of the game is just filled with this incredible mystery on what is actually going on. What are people's actual motives? There's this constant intrigue and push and pull of who's lying and who's telling the truth, and where's all this going to end up and go to next. And it all culminates this final confrontation that is just bittersweet final chapter that I think is really beautiful in a lot of ways, especially visually. And in not while I don't think it's gonna be on the level of Endwalker or Shadowbringers, it does some really good stuff on its own. But that's where I'm gonna kind of get into the negatives now of like, hey, these are probably the things that didn't make the whole thing 100% land. Oh my god, this is the best expansion. I still really love this story. I still really think it's a good story, but it has some problems and some things that I wasn't expecting. Let's get into the negatives of Dawntrail. So one big negative I had with Dawntrail is the succession right arc, right? This is where we have to pick the new king of Tuliyola, and it just really simply, it just lasts too long and gets really repetitive at points. And I did enjoy the adventure of meeting these new people and cultures and whatnot, but it kind of felt like it was spinning its wheels, and the things it was talking about again was repeating itself over and over again. We can find compromise and work together with these people as we talk and learn about their culture and why their culture is this way, and why these people feel like they need to be doing what they're doing. That is like the whole lesson of Dawntrail, of like understanding the person in front of you and their culture so that you can apply it and we can work all together. That is one of the big main things of this. And I just feel like the succession right arc kind of again spins its wheels for quite a bit and lasts maybe a level or two too long, and probably should have been wrapped up a bit quicker. And there's definitely parts of it where it's just like, oh hey, yeah, we need to do a thing, go find a thing and go collect some logs so we can build a thing. And that happens multiple times throughout the story, as the quest pacing for the succession right arc part is really weird and off-putting, and I feel like they just couldn't find enough good reasons for us to be where we were at, right? Like, hey, what is a good reason for us to go to this place, and what should we be doing while we're there? And while Shadowbringers had like this, you know, journey we were going on, hey, we got to kill the 5 angel guys or whatever and save the world, this again is just a much slower pace, and it very much takes the time to learn what these people are about, and where do they make their money, and what do they trade with the other cultures, and what is some of their history, how did they join the kingdom, and we go through every beat with all these different peoples. It's just that we didn't need to do that 8 times. Like one or two of those could have been cut in some way. Again, I did like learning about these cultures, but we do it I think literally 7 or 8 times, one for every gemstone we have to collect. So at a certain point, it no longer feels exciting to be completing these succession right trials until like the very last one, which is the most exciting one and is the most conflicting one and has the most character growth, and it is the best one, but it takes a while to get there. And then finally they name the successor, and this whole span of quests is just again filled with very, very odd quest pacing, as it is very much go to a place, oh, the succession right thing you want to do, okay, Alize, you go collect wood, I'll go kill a monster or follow Wook Lamont, you go do XYZ, and it's just like that pattern multiple times, to where like I was losing a bit of steam at the beginning, until we get to those more interesting succession right arcs, right? Like the giants is really interesting and their beliefs, and it is central to the story. I didn't need to learn about the Pelu Pelu and their alpacas, and I didn't need to learn about the moblins and how they create their jewelry. That is something that really very much could have been regulated as side quests, as usually side quests that go into an area's culture and their society that's kind of usually where those quests are at. But this is a whole main story quest section that is just, hey, we got to learn about these people, which for a new land makes total sense. Again, my complaint is that it lasts a really long time before anything interesting happens, and that's in large part due to quest pacing and the repetitive nature of some of the story beats. And one thing that is gonna hurt the pacing for you if she doesn't land with you is Wook Lamont herself. I personally think she's fine and she's totally okay, but she is very much a shonen protagonist. She is the believe it and I'm gonna become Hokage, because she's very much letting you know I'm gonna become the Dawn Servant, and she just goes on and on about it. And it's very much a character where like things kind of just work out for her over and over again, and she has no real pushback. She does grow as a character, but that's because she's just learning more about her people and about her father and the things he's done. But her story is more about understanding who her father is and what he's done and why he's the Dawn Servant and what it means to be the Dawn Servant. But her beliefs are never really tested until one point, and it's just very much a like, oh man, yeah, oh well, you're having a tough time, we'll solve it together in some way if we just like talk to each other and learn about each other's cultures. And again, there's no real pushback on that for quite a while. It's very repetitive, and Wook Lamont seems really one note in a lot of spots. The voice acting I actually really like, but there are spots that like just the delivery wasn't there or didn't come off right. Wook Lamont has literally the most lines in the whole game by a vast amount. So if you don't like Wook Lamont, you're not gonna like a lot of the story, because this is her story. You are very much a back character. Again, the Scions are basically barely there and barely voiced. It is mostly Wook Lamont and Aaronville and Kryl that get main billing for this whole thing. Estinian, I think, literally has like 2 lines. Like, just go into that expectation of this is very much Wuklamot's journey and story, and Koana as well, her brother, and this family's struggle, everything going on with Tuliyo'al. It is Tuliyo'al's story through the eyes of Wuklamot, is basically the best way I could put it. And if she just doesn't land with you, you're not gonna like her. And I was just totally fine with her. The people around her, her brother, Gulul Jaja, Bakul Jaja, Zaraja, Koana, and all the people like she's interacting with and talking with is what like made the game for me in a lot of ways. But it wasn't really Wuklamot herself. But I did like the little things like the name her family calls her and things like that, right? There are very good things about this character. Really, the main complaint is there's a lot of this character, like way too much, to where it feels clingy. And like, I want to hang out with some of these other characters, but no, I'm hanging out with Wuklamot again. Some people are gonna dig it, some people it's gonna push them away. I was totally fine with it, as I believe that her and the people around her are really interesting and fun to be around. Plus, you still have your scions, occasionally throwing their quips here and there, talking to you a bit and adding some of their spice to the story. But again, it is mainly about Wuklamot. I really wish I had more time with Koana or Zeral or Bakul, but it is all Wuklamot. The scions are largely sidelined, and I'm trying to think of any really good moments with the scions. There'll be the occasional Alizé zinger or something like that, right? Like they do have lines that are of import or funny or little interactions that are cute, but there's just like not one of those moments, you know, that like really highlights their characters. The main highlights are for the new characters. But that's all I can really say without diving into spoilers and more of the nitty gritty, as there's a lot of concepts and things that just happen in the game that I'm really interested in or I think really cool, and certain characters that would be spoilers that I want to talk more about and would love to talk to other people about and whatnot, and the whole ending sequence of the game. But where I land overall, my overall feeling is that Dawntrail is a good first step. It's not amazing, it's not incredible, it's really solid, and it has moments of brilliance, but it is mainly focused on very much a new cast to at points where it feels like, why are the scions here? And things like that, right? Don't go into this expecting like, oh, this is the scions of the Seventh Dawn's next adventure. Dawntrail is you going on an adventure with this cat lady you met and bringing your friends along, who occasionally jump in every now and then. But I say Dawntrail is a good story overall. Where I would rank it is probably around Stormblood, but that's Stormblood and Dawntrail again have this fucking crazy task of being compared to Heaven's Word, Shadowbringers, and Endwalker. Some of the best RPG stories ever told on their own. So naturally, yes, when people talk about Stormblood, it's like weirdly negative. And I think Dawntrail is going to get caught in that as well. But man, I had fun on this journey and I enjoyed it. And I want to see more of these people and this land. So I am excited for the patches to come. But now, let's get into the spoilers, baby. So one thing I did mention in the negatives was how Wuklamot really had no real pushback to her philosophy of like, oh, if I learn about your culture, we can work this out. Sphene is a very good foil to Wuklamot. Basically just Wuklamot, right? She is another person who loves her people and would do anything for them, but she has no options. Her people are slowly dying out, and if things aren't done that are questionable, it's over for them, and she failed her people again. So these two characters very much understand each other and understand that the other person is a good person, but Sphene literally has no choice. And if it is her people or for your people, then this is where we're at. And it's, again, a really good foil to this mentality of like, yeah, we can talk it out and work it out. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're faced with the bitter reality of the world, and resources are finite, and apparently souls are very finite. That there simply is no other choice for Sphene other than just giving up, where she just is just like, no. And I love that line where she says, I will wipe my memory and become the eater of worlds to save my people. And that's fucking crazy. And when you initially meet Sphene, she's flags are going off like crazy, right? Because she's way too good, and she's clearly not giving you all the information, and she's talking to you like a politician, where she's not really answering anything or any of your questions, and sometimes just outright lying to you. But you can tell there's some genuine stuff going with her. Like her interactions with her people are not fake, and it's just like a really interesting ride going through that last half of the game. It is the best part of that game, really. Not that I didn't enjoy the succession right stuff. I did enjoy learning about those cultures, but just the intrigue and the implications of the things those people were doing, of basically making their own live stream and cutting out the ether going to the world. You couldn't like kind of see like the things we've learned from the original game is like really self-destructive, and you're kind of thinking like, wait, this doesn't sound limitless. It sounds like at a certain point you're gonna run out of fucking souls, and that's like the reveal eventually, right? That they're running out. To keep these endless going, it is taking more and more new souls. And we come ahead to this final climactic area where you go to the City of Gold, where everyone is young and happy, and basically it's a recreation of heaven, as people are getting to do the things they never got to do in life, and meeting their loved ones that they were estranged from, or that person you never asked to marry you, and so forth, right? It is an actual paradise. It's like set like this incredibly golden theme park. It's such a cool idea, and I wish there was a couple more characters that we knew that were like in the area, as it was mainly Otis and Nakiwa, I believe her name is, that we come across. But it had some really good emotional beats, and I just loved like the theme of us going to this really beautiful place and just shutting it down, and it just turns into black obsidian nothing, and the music goes away, and it's just dead quiet. You literally ended their paradise, and it gets into discussions of like, okay, well, what is life, and life without a soul, and memories, and what takes priority. And kind of this game decides, or it seems to decide, is that actual new life and souls take priority over. I mean, they basically say, right, memory and data, automated life. At a certain point, like, they had to make that choice, and it's not a pretty choice, and clearly the characters didn't want to really do it, but the lengths their queen was going to go to like keep that shit going. It's like, okay, we respect and we understand why you're doing what you're doing. You consider these people alive just like anyone else would, and we kind of do as well, but a line has to be drawn to the fact that we understand each other and respect each other, but there's a line here of you literally can't exist without destroying us, so we have to fight. And it's a really cool idea, and I really want to see more discussions on like the whole last part of the game, really, man. It's really cool. I really had a good time going through all of that, and of course Wuklama is like there with you a lot of the time. But I think that's probably where a lot of her best parts are, is actually when we're going through those sections of the story, as her like faith or her ideals are being tested a bit more, as it wasn't in the first half of the game at all. As like what makes sense to me story wise with the Rite of Succession is this: yes, you need a leader like Koana who wants to innovate and doesn't want to be stuck in the past, and you need a leader like Wuklamat who like wants to understand their people, protect their people, understand their cultures, and all that, right? But you also need a leader like Zor Jaral, gonna fuck someone up if they come at me, right? It is basically his deal, right? But he took it too far where he wants to conquer for like no real reason. But if like Wuklamat was in that position of, hey, all of Tuyulala is gonna die, what are you gonna do? Zoral, Jara, and Sphene are very similar in that part of like, but Sphene had a like reason like, hey, I need to conquer, right? And that's the aspect of like Wuklamat that's missing, of like, it doesn't feel like she would go that far for her people. She's too nice. So like, again, with the Rite of Succession part, I feel like that balance was missing of like, hey, she never learned, I feel like she never learned that lesson of like, you do actually need to be a brutal bastard to be a king. Everything is just not going to work out through talking all the time. Sometimes there is just hard realities of the world, and you have to make that choices. And maybe that's what like her choice with Sphene at the end and all that is supposed to entail. But yeah, I just, the Rite of Succession arc kind of felt like wacky races to me, where like nothing really went wrong or anyone was tested. Koana learned the error of his ways is like really the biggest character arc change there, and that's like really about it. Let me know if I'm wrong, or hey, if you want to have any discussion, leave comments below. I would love to talk more about this stuff. Really quick, like last thoughts is Bakul Jaja is my boy. I cannot wait to see more Bakul Jaja. Bakul Jaja did nothing wrong. But yeah, that reveal, the Succession Right arc, when we got to that point, was like the most interesting part, with meeting the one tribe that is confrontational to Wuklamat and the Rite of Succession, and they had to find a way around it. But my issue with that story arc is like, they found the answer a little too quickly, and people were willing to accept like her new ideas way too fast. It's just not something that's just gonna happen immediately, right? And like again, it's a bit too quick. It felt like it should have been a patch worth or no expansions worth of story with the sons and whatnot and what those people were doing. But she like solves their problems in a couple discussions and a couple ideas, right? It's really weird. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I mainly wanted to talk about the ending and the last section of the story. I will do anything for little Gulul Jaja, and I'll kill any motherfucker for him. Anyone touches that blue boy, I'll stab that bitch. Yeah, man. I think Sphene is an incredible character and is a really good foil to everything that happens in that first game, the first half of the game. Yeah, of course, it's not Endwalker level, right? And it's not Dawntrail level, but it's really interesting to fight a villain that like understands like I'm gonna become a monster and I have to do it. Compared to Emmett Suck, who like didn't think we were alive, so he's like, I don't feel no guilt. Sphene very much felt guilt for what she was doing, but she was gonna fucking do it anyways. And yeah, I would have more discussion of that last part, but Dawntrail is really good. It's super solid. Can't wait to see what else they do in the future. Let me know how you feel down below. Like, comment, subscribe. Now we'll see you on the next random drop review. Peace.